Welcome back to If Money Talks, where we are letting the money do the talking. I hope you've continued to spy on your money. In fact, I hope that becomes a habit for life. And I hope you've begun thinking and maybe even spending more like a manager than an owner. And perhaps after our last session together, you've taken some steps in the direction of give, save, and live. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with a big question. A question that on the surface doesn't seem to have anything to do with money, but in the end, you'll discover it has everything to do with money. And it's actually a question that Jesus sets up with a parable. This is one of my favorite parables Jesus told, perhaps because many years ago, this was the parable God used to redirect my thinking as it relates to my personal finances. Here's what he said. He said, the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. So let's stop right there. Here's a rich guy who now has even more wealth because the ground produced an abundant harvest. The ground, which, by the way, he had no control over. Jesus continues. The rich man thought to himself, what shall I do? I mean, this was a problem, right? What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. And then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and I will build bigger barns, and there I will store my, notice the word, surplus, my extra grain. Now, on the surface, it doesn't seem like we have anything in common with this lucky fellow, but just below the surface, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a garage sale? Yeah. Have you ever carried a load or two or 20 to Goodwill? Right. Have you ever had a hard time finding a place in the attic or the basement for something you weren't using anymore because the attic or basement was already full of stuff you weren't using anymore? So yeah, we may have more in common with this fellow than first meets the eye. Back to the parable. I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry, which is really a great plan if you think about it. I mean, it's kind of the goal, isn't it? It's the American dream, right? Have enough money to buy whatever you want now, save enough so that you can retire and buy whatever you want later. And if you've really done things right, you'll have enough to make sure your kids are taken care of as well. If you can do all of that, you've pretty much won, right? I mean, you're blessed, right? Well, so thought everybody in Jesus' audience. And then Jesus surprised them with this. But God said to him, the rich man, you fool. It's like, what? I mean, everybody in Jesus' audience is taken aback, just like you probably were the first time you read this parable. I mean, he achieved the goal. He's living the dream. Clearly, there's some kind of disconnect. But God said to him, you fool, this very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then, and listen to this question, then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? In other words, you are out of time, even though you're not out of grain. You are out of time, even though you're not out of money. And that's going to be the story for most of us, isn't it? We've talked about this. For most of us, because of family support or pensions or 401ks or decent investing, we're actually going to run out of time before we run out of money. So the question that God asked the rich guy is really a question for all of us. Then God asked him, then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? And the answer is somebody else. But not because this guy was generous, because this guy was dead. He didn't give it. He just left it. Now, at this point, Jesus pulls out of the parable and he addresses his audience and, well, he addresses us as well. And here's what he said. This is how it will be. This thing that I just described and illustrated, this is how it will be. Total, complete loss. Everything, as in everything was left behind. He ate, he drank, he was married, and then he died. Nothing meaningful to show for his life. This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God. Jesus is not teaching against preparing for the future. Here's what Jesus is saying. He's saying this is how it will be for anyone who only prepares for their future and is not rich towards God. This is how it will be for anyone who embraces the consumption assumption, the assumption that everything that comes my way is for my consumption. That's the mistake the rich man made. He built bigger barns because he thought it was all for him. And in the end, total loss. Do you remember what money told us back in part one? Money said, I can add meaning to your life, but I'm not the meaning of life. I can add meaning to your life, and that's the right lens. That's how we should view our money. Money can add meaning to our life because money is a tool. And when we use money as a tool, it adds meaning to our life. The rich man, he never realized this. He thought his money was a gift, not a tool, an entitlement, a reward to sit back and enjoy. Jesus teaches that our money is a tool, and that's why it can add meaning to our life. So here's the question I mentioned up top, the one that at first glance seems to have nothing to do with money. Here it is. To what ends do you want your life to be a means? To what ends do you want your life to be a means? If something is not a means to an end, it has no meaning. That's what it means to have meaning. It has no purpose. It's the rich man's life. His wealth was not a means to anything other than himself. And in the end, he had nothing to show for himself but himself. So his life, even with all of his wealth, had no meaning. So when he was gone, as Jesus said, total loss. Again, for something, including your life, for something to have meaning, it must be a means to an end. So, to what ends do you want your life to be a means? Here's another way to ask that same question. What do you want people to celebrate about you when you're gone? Or my wife Sandra's version of that question is this: what do you want people to line up and thank you for in the end? Most people never stop to ask those kinds of questions. Perhaps you haven't either. I don't know how you'd answer it, but I know how you wouldn't answer it. I know you wouldn't say, well, for me, it's all about accumulation, consumption, and upgrades, right? I mean, here's the thing. If you don't figure this out, life will figure it out for you. Your appetites, your desire for more, bigger, newer, shinier will dictate the answer to that question. Culture will pull you toward the she ate, she drank, she was merry, and she died. Nobody chooses that on purpose. That's why the meaning question really is about your money. Money is a tool. It's a tool that can add meaning to your life. So let me break this down and make it practical. Last time we were together, I said that the best way to prioritize financially is to give first, save second, and then live on the rest. That is, reprioritize around generosity rather than consumption. Take the thing that's usually last on our list, giving, and move it to the top of the list. And I suggested this because of what Jesus said, where our treasure is, there our heart will be also. Now, this is the brilliant thing about that statement. It's a principle that actually works both ways. In other words, if you'd like to change where your heart is, you just change where your money is going. And here's something I've been suggesting to people for years. When you decide where to give from a grateful heart and give from a broken heart. Give from a grateful heart and a broken heart. Here's how that works. Choose an organization that you're really grateful for. You're grateful because of what it's done for you and your family, and then give a portion of your giving money there first. Your local church, your kid's school, whatever it might be. Then choose an organization or two that addresses a need that breaks your heart. For San and I, those are organizations that support foster care and foster kids. For you, it may be an organization that does something overseas, or maybe a local hospital or a nonprofit committed to curing a particular disease. And every time you get paid, you send them a check. That's what it looks like to give from a grateful heart and a broken heart. But the key is to decide ahead of time. Like we said last time, pick a percentage of your income and give it right off the top to the organizations you're grateful for and to the organizations that address things that break your heart. Now, giving first may sound crazy, and from a certain perspective, it is crazy. But it's a better version of crazy than spending everything on you and having nothing to show for it in the end, right? Crazy is living as if your life consisted in the accumulation of stuff and of wealth. Crazy is leaving your kids a bunch of stuff they're going to sell or throw away. So one more time, to what ends do you want your life to be a means? You should know the answer to that question before you spend yourself into a position where you can't address what matters most to you. Skip that question, and you'll just follow your money. You'll settle for me first living with a little leftover giving, and that would be a shame. Jesus says that would be a total loss. It would be a shame because all you'll have to show for yourself is yourself. But when you identify and embrace your answer to our big question, your money will follow. You'll begin to view everything you own, everything that comes your way, as a tool you can use to add meaning to your life. Meaning to the lives of others as well. So come on, let's get this right. Let's listen when money tells us I can add meaning to your life.